Okay, so I just recording. So can we start now?
We can start now. I killed everything. We're good.
Okay, let's do it. Um, so hey guys, Chris here. Welcome back to Polkadot Insider, an educational platform that helps the communities exploring adoption on Polkadot network. Today episode would be like a very interesting topic about decentralized identity. Why? So as we know, in a centralized identities management system, data is stored and managed by central authorities who typically maintain a central repository or database where user identity information is stored. So this includes, for example, your full name, date of birth, address, email, or even financial information. And it's also by blockchain technology called decentralized identities, is DIDs. So decentralized identity refer to a system in which an individual or entity control their digital identity without the assistance of a centralized authority. It is a method of managing identities that prioritize user privacy, securities, and portabilities. So today with me, talking about DIDs and how it would be the future of Web3. Ingo Ruebe, CEO of KILT Protocol, an identity blockchain for generating decentralized identifier and verifiable credential, providing secure and practical identity solution for enterprise and consumer. Welcome, Ingo. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so quick question first. So why did you make Q protocol, and what's the story behind the initiative of this network?
Yeah, so the story behind it is actually I came from industry. I was working on as a CTO for a big publishing company, and we decided at one point that blockchain is probably a very interesting and future technology, and we should actually do something there. And so I basically volunteered to lead this endeavor to do something useful with blockchain, and
Okay.
we formed a company out of that, and I got a big part of the shares actually, and that was pretty good for me. And then we sat around and said, okay, now we have the tasks actually, we have the money, we have the playing field, and we have quite good developers. Now we have to do something useful with blockchain, something
Mhm.
useful also from an industry point of view. And then we sat together and said, okay, when industry is going to adopt blockchain technology, what are they going to do first? And then we were looking on different use cases from advertising to whatnot. And we always came to the point where we said, yeah, but actually for that identity would be needed. And there's no identity on blockchain. There's just addresses, right? But you need to identify, for example, who owns something and who actually owns the, if you say advertising, then who owns the ad and who's going to watch the ad and who's going to pay to whom for what. And if you think of other things like intellectual property rights, it's really interesting who actually owns the intellectual property, and maybe even if defining the object which contains intellectual property would be interesting. So you can't define identity a little at all on blockchain. And then we said, actually, for all those cases that we looked at, we don't know which is going to be the first one, which is going to be adopted by industry, but what they all need is identity. So then we said, okay, then we just make identity because everyone's going to need it. And that was the start of KILT actually.
Right. So I'm curious. So in your perspective, what is the current stage of blockchain-based identities and credential uses of consumers and enterprises?
Yeah, so well, there's the inside and the outside of the blockchain ecosystems. Outside the blockchain ecosystems, there's identity, which we can call the paper or plastic or physical identity, which works with passports, works with driver's licenses, library cards, and university degrees and stuff like that. and which is based very often on physical things like your eyes, your fingerprints, your signature, your face, something like that. And actually, we can say that this works quite well. This is extremely decentralized when you start thinking about it, because it is all based on something which cannot be more decentralized. If it's based on your face, this is decentralization at its best, right? Because no one else has your face, and no one can really fake your face, and no one can switch off your face, and you control your face, and so it doesn't get better than that. And also the pieces around credentials, like the driver's licenses and the library cards and the university degrees, they are also decentralized already, because they are issued by random entities like a library or a university or just me. So I can issue you a credential saying you're a nice person, which is a credential. I can even put a picture of your face on it, then it is yours, and you can own it, and you can decide what to do with it and who sees it. So this is all totally decentralized. So we're living in a world which is much more decentralized than we think. So we are close to the optimum, I would say, in decentralization with in the physical world. In the digital world, it is that is not the case. It's all absolutely centralized. We do have things like Facebook and Google, who are identity providers, and identity providers are, compared to the physical world, really a step backward, because they are centralized. They control your identity. They can switch you off. They can switch your face off, your digital face, which is really not nice. And you're getting in a dependency there, which you actually don't want to have. And the more you use that stuff, the deeper the dependency grows, which is also not good. So there's lots of issues with these things. And then they're also monetizing on it, which is also not nice. So I think in the digital world, we are far behind the physical world. And the blockchain world, when you look at things like, well, addresses are pretty cool, first of all, because they are decentralized. You make them on your own computer, which is actually prerequisite for being decentralized, that no one assigns you the address, right? So as long as you don't use an exchange where they actually assign you an address, but as long as you have the wallet on your computer and you make the address yourself, it is first of all decentralized, which is good. But there's no standard mechanism for adding credential to something like that in the crypto world. Then there's some things which, especially around the Ethereum world, where you have the Ethereum name service, which is actually a centralized service where you only lease your identity for a time, which is also a little bit crazy, because identity shouldn't be leased, it should be your own. And then you have ideas of how to add in credentials to that, which we see something in something like soulbound tokens, which is actually a nice idea. Unfortunately, it is very, very blockchain centric, and in this case, even Ethereum centric, which means that the possibility to actually grow into the real world, which is necessary at the point, for example, if you want to get industry in, or if you want to have this as something that you can travel with, or something like that, then it doesn't work, because it is it's just for blockchain people and doesn't work outside. And what we have to do, if we want to have something successful identity-wise, we have to adhere to standards, or we have to first build the standards and then adhere to them, which sounds a little bit boring and a little bit complicated. But if you look at identity projects in the blockchain world, like I think the first ones were actually Uport. So people who were around in 2015 will remember. That was a fantastic project. I'm not saying anything negative against for these guys. They were brilliant, and they had a really, really good concept. But it was just Uport. And Uport was a 20-person company. And if they went to the governments and say, yeah, now this is digital identity, look at it, isn't it great? They would say, yeah, but you're just 20-person company. How will this be the worldwide standard? And we want to be compatible with the world. So this doesn't work. And unfortunately, Uport didn't succeed. If you want to be successful, you have to first sit down with all the other industry players and governments and so on and say, what does digital identity actually look like? Let's define it. Let's take a piece of paper and write it down, and then all look deep into each other's eyes and say, now you adhere to that. And this is what happened from 2018 to 2022, when the Decentralized Identity Foundation was sitting together with 300 industry partners, including big companies like Microsoft, IBM, but also with governments and blockchain people and so on. And they took those 5 years to actually agree on what digital identity looks like. And now we can implement that. And this is what is called DIDs, decentralized identifiers, which is the equivalent of your face or your fingerprint, because you make it yourself. And it's not just a crypto address, it's much more powerful. And verifiable credentials, which is the which is like the passports or the library cards, which you can attach to these things, and you can own them and you can present them, and you have all the features that you had in the physical world now also in the digital world, which is fantastic. But it took some time, and it will take even longer to actually grow in a way that it is actually used and accepted everywhere. But we see that this is currently happening. It's happening in industry, it's happening in governments, it's happening in the blockchain world. So it's happening everywhere at once, and at one point all these things will grow together, and what you have done is fair, decentralized, privacy preserving, secure system where no one can actually take the benefits out other than the owner of the identity, which is fantastic. So the world is moving into the right direction after it first moved totally backward. Now we're moving forward again. It takes some time, but it's good. Very long answer, sorry.
Yeah. I understand. Like it's what really interesting, especially about the part that you said, like a lot of industry expert, a lot of big companies coming in to sit down and define what is DIDs actually look like. So I'm curious to know, like for KILT protocols, how actually KILT protocol work in core tech part. So how it's work?
Oh yeah, so KILT protocol actually is pretty simple. KILT protocol is a DID is something like a JSON file, right? Just imagine a JSON. It has a public part and a private part, just like crypto address. The private part always stays in your wallet, so that has not a lot to do with the KILT protocol. And then there's the KILT blockchain, and the KILT blockchain can hold the public part of your DID, where everybody now thinks, oh, isn't that private information that you don't want to have on blockchain? No, it is not. It is just the identifier. So you can choose if you want to show your face or not. If you want to show your face, then your face, people can look at it, but they cannot use your face, because the private part of your face, the signature part, basically, this sits in your wallet. So you are, then it's basically not more than a registry, right? So it's a registry where if you decide that you want to be listed there, you can be found there. And then, of course, you can do things which you can't do with crypto addresses. So natively, at least, you can add human readable name to that, which we call the Web3 name. You can add different addresses to that. You can, inside the Polkadot ecosystem, outside the Polkadot ecosystem, you can have Ethereum addresses, Bitcoin addresses, Polkadot, KILT addresses, just attached to these things, so that, for example, wallets can associate your human readable name with those addresses. And then you can say things like, you can try that on Nova Wallet, for example, send money to Ingo, and then you can send dots to Ingo, you can send Ethereum to Ingo, and it always arrives at Ingo, right? Because it's a unique human readable name. So this is very practical things. Then on top of that, you have a feature that we call service endpoints, where the user can actually say, here's a file which I have under my control, in my web server or on IPFS or wherever I do control anything. And this file represents a part of my identity. For example, it leads to my website. Or here's another JSON file which contains a couple of credentials which I want to make public to the whole world, even though this is actually personal information. It's not set on the blockchain. sitting in the file which you control, which is then okay because you can delete it and stuff like that. All these functionalities are exposed by the KILT blockchain. So anyone can basically go, make themselves a DID and add information to this DID. This is the one part. The second part is that we do provide verifiable credentials, which is like passports and library cards and so on. Anyone can create them. Anyone can create their own trust with it and monetize this trust and sell, for example, I could go and sell, this is a nice person credential. It costs $2. If you give me $2, then I actually check if you're a nice person. If you are, then I will give you the credential. You have it on your wallet, and the validity of the credential, so that I actually sign that you are a nice person, and this is a valid thing. This stands as a hash on the blockchain, so that anyone who you send the credential to can actually verify on the blockchain if this thing is still valid, if I really issued it, or if you just try to fake something or alter something or change something in it. So this is an additional functionality. And there's some more, but this more functionality of what KILT does. So it is basically the public ledger for identity.
Right. So actually, when I scripting these interviews, and I read a really interesting report relating to DID market that expected to have a compound annual rate of like nearly more than 90% from 2023 to 2030. So that would be a really huge number. So in your perspective, so what would be the triggering point that you think the consumer will start to adopting decentralized identity in real life?
Yeah, so I think if you had asked me like half a year ago, I would have had a totally different answer. So half a year ago, I thought this is more like a grassroots movement, and it's going to start with the blockchain people, and then maybe the gaming people come in, and then some Web2 companies understand, okay, there's actually a business behind that. That's pretty cool. And they start adopting it. And then big companies like, I don't know, KYC providers and people like that actually come in. And then at the very end, the government say, okay, now as everyone's using that in the tech space, apparently we also have to jump on that. It now turns out that it goes the other way around, which was totally surprising to me. We saw that the American government, which is one of the biggest, actually just said they are going to move all their credentials to DIDs and verifiable credentials, and that they even calls for companies that they build that. And they also said if it's not DIDs and not verifiable credentials, you don't need to apply. So the governments are pushing this out, which is, well, I thought that it would happen, but I wouldn't have thought that it happens before 2030. So apparently it happens now. So of course the software has to be built and all that stuff, and maybe 2025, so 5 years earlier than I thought. I think basically everyone in the Western Hemisphere will have a DID and verifiable credentials. So governments are pushing it in. Fantastic. It's because it's actually decentralization. I mean, if the governments really listen, then it's good for them because they have the same thing that they had before. People are still making their own faces, right? It's now only digital faces. So the face is not owned by the government, it's owned by you. Good news for you. And the government is attaching a credential and issuing a credential to you, just like today. Today, they issue your identity card and your passport, and you hold that, and you can use that for whatever you want without the government having a possibility to check what you use it for. And this is the same, this is what they had in the physical world, and now they're getting exactly the same thing in the digital world, and they're taking it. When I was talking to the German government like 4 years ago, they said, no, we want to issue the DID. And I said, actually, that's not the right way. No one will want that because this is centralization and giving you so much power, so much more power than you had before. This is actually not very democratic. You shouldn't do that. And they were not listening. But now the Americans run forward and they make it exactly the right way, and they make it the privacy preserving way, the democratic way, fantastic. And I think a lot of governments will follow that example. So in the next couple of years, this will actually be the biggest driver for adoption of DIDs and verifiable credentials.
Yeah, fantastic. So let's talk about more about KILT Protocol. So KILT Protocol is the infrastructure for different identity services like DID sign, social KYCs, Smart Wallet, and recently OpenDID and C-Type Hub. So how these services work as the best flow and also create demand for the consumer of the network.
Yeah, so they're also totally different. So, so let's
Yeah,
start. Let's maybe start with the Sporan, because a Sporan is actually a prototype that we don't really push into the market. This is something that you can download, you can play with it, you can find it ugly. It is ugly, and we're not going to make it beautiful because we don't want this as a core product of us. We just want to show people what an identity wallet looks like, because
yeah,
everyone knows a crypto wallet, it can hold a coin. Fantastic. But when you look at your wallet in your pocket, there's something else to your wallet. It also holds credentials, right? You have your ID
yeah.
card in it, like that. So an identity wallet is a little bit different. It can hold coins, of course, like any wallet, but it should also be able to hold credentials, and it should be able to present your DID, right? And present
All
your
right.
credentials signed with your DID. So there's a little bit more functionality. And this is where Sporan is a good example for. We're going to push out in a couple of weeks a set of a toolbox basically to build your own wallet, to build your own identity wallet, so that everyone can build identity wallets with it. This is not really, you can already look at it, but it's not in the state that we wanted to be released. So towards the end of the year, I would say, you will have this thing out, and then anyone from any ecosystem can start building their own identity wallets with it, which is it's going to be free of charge, and so on. At least the desktop version is going to be free of charge. This is, it's going to be called Nessie. So think of Nessie, that's the future wallet, basically. Sporan, you can look at it. This is how identity wallet looks like.
Yeah.
I think crypto wallets in 5 years will all have the identity part. Sporan is the first one. Look at it, then you've seen it before the others. Some of the things that you mentioned are more examples, like DidSign, which is a version of DocuSign, which is decentralized and where no server is needed and no server is used. But so this is something that some industry could maybe pick up and say, actually, we're making a nicer and better version of DocuSign. You can now sign with your DID, which you maybe got from your government, and then you can sign your documents directly, and you don't need a server in between, and you don't need to upload your documents, which are maybe secret, to a central server where you don't know where it actually stands, which is also nice. It's an implementation of that. That goes more to the end consumer, or it is maybe attractive for industry to think in this direction. Then you, what else did you mention?
Yeah, a lot of like OpenDID and also yeah,
OpenDID is actually that's a beautiful thing. But it's pretty technical. So this goes more to people who run websites,
yeah,
and they want to have a login service there. So logging in with the DID is actually something which is possible, right? You don't need to have a username and a password. You can just use your identity wallet and log into something like, I don't know, a news site or a paid thingy or a game or whatever you want to log into. And then, of course, the people who have already built this thing and maybe have a button like log in with Facebook, and they have a button like log in with Google, and maybe
yeah,
they can take your email and whatnot. They can now with this product, they can actually have another product like login with KILT, like a button, which makes it really easy to, in the OpenID standard, to use an identity wallet to log into your website. So
yeah.
this is basically, so you can build this website up in like an hour or so. So no developers needed. This is just a configuration file that you run on your server, and then you have this additional button like login with KILT. This is pretty new.
Okay, so let's take one of the example of your partnership, public pressure, and when we give identity ownership for example, like music artists or verifying NFTs made by the artist. So whether it's traded on the market, so how it's worked and how we can know if it's justified or not.
Yeah, that's a very good and interesting question. So what does public pressure do? They are basically producing NFTs, right?
Yeah,
Uh, and we thought, wouldn't it be nice if you can also identify NFTs, because NFTs are actually a bit of an issue because they sometimes live on different blockchains. They look very much alike, and this is
yeah,
some ugly things around that which you actually don't want to have. And so, how can we actually add to this ownership thing? How can we also not only identify the owner, but also identify the thing itself? And then the second question, how can we add information to an NFT which we don't own?
yeah,
Which first sounds crazy, but you need that. For example, assume you are a big gallerist,
yeah,
and there's some, and I'm a great NFT artist, and I made some great NFTs, and you saw them and say, actually, I want to put them in my gallery and show them there. And then I say, oh, this is great, please do that. But how do I prove that you showed the things, my NFTs? Because you actually made them more valuable because you showed them because you are a famous gallerist. So how can you add the information? I showed this thing from this date to that date in my famous gallery. How can you
yeah,
attach this information to the NFT? Well, you don't own it, right? Because I just gave it to you, you give it back. And you can do that with something that we call asset DIDs.
yeah,
An asset DID is a long string defined in the CAIP, the Chain Agnostic Improvement Protocol proposals. And that can identify any object on any blockchain uniquely, which is
mm,
pretty powerful, because then you can, and this is what we call an asset DID. So you can identify the first Bitcoin transaction, the longest smart contract that you find on Ethereum, and every NFT that has ever been created. They all already have an asset DID, and they are
right,
self-contained, which means that they don't need to be attached somewhere. You don't need to touch the system. They are already there. They are. So if I
yeah,
have an NFT, I can compute this number. And when I have this number, what I can do is that I add a credential to it. It would be a public credential. So the credential is now put on the blockchain. Everyone can read it. So you, as the gallerist, you just take the number of my NFT and say, I exposed that in my gallery,
yeah.
and from then to then, and it was a great success. And I think this is going to be really, really valuable in the future. And as a famous gallerist, this counts. Now, this information is attached to any to the NFT and to any NFT. Anyone can do it. You don't have to program anything on Ethereum or whatnot. It's just attached there, and anyone else can read that. And even if the ownership changes, so if I sell my NFT to a third person, then still this information travels with the NFT. So it will always be, so it enhances the value of the NFT without jeopardizing anything, and you don't have to
Yeah.
touch anything. This is also, the information is stored on the KILT blockchain and via the asset DID, which never changes for the NFT. Those two things are linked together. So this is what public pressure actually did with their NFTs.
Okay. So another case story is the partnership with Deploy, which is very, very famous right now on Polkadot ecosystem, right? So they using KILT protocol to enhance KYC solution, right? So can you explain what kinds of services that they use from KILT and also why uh, these kinds of organization need these services from KILT protocol? Because I think that in the future, maybe a lot of organization would be using these services.
Yeah, so the thinking of Deloitte was so they already had a KYC and KYB business, right? They are world famous, they're all over the place, they have subsidiaries in any country, and they are trusted. So they are a trusted entity. If they give you a paper saying you are you, then you can basically go with this paper and buy a company or whatnot, yeah, because it's really proven then by someone. It's not just you
Yeah,
saying
right.
this one, this is also Deloitte checked it, right? So and they actually did this on paper, and for probably 100 years or so, and it was a very good business. And now they thought, okay, how can we actually leverage digital things around that? Are we going to make just a website,
Yeah.
or are we going to use a standard where those how we issue those credentials in a digital way so that they can be recognized everywhere? And then they were digging probably a little bit into what's happening in the identity world, and then they said, okay, it needs to be verifiable credentials. And it would be cool if this whole thing is secured then by a blockchain, because it adds an extra level of security to it. So how many complete blockchain implementations of verifiable credentials and DIDs do you find in the world? Is probably one, which is KILT, and this is why they chose KILT for it. But what
Mm.
they're doing is actually they're expanding and amplifying their business a lot, because they come from the slow paper world where a credential probably costs a fortune, and is only used in KYB
Yeah.
processes, and very seldomly, but then very thoroughly probably. And they are moving to the consumer world in this way, right? And so they're expanding their business, and they're using the infrastructure which is already there, which you don't
Yeah.
have to pay for, because everything is open source and open and accessible for everyone. So they just use the infrastructure that we provide, and build their digital business on top of KILT, which is nice.
Yeah. So the next question is quite interesting when I always ask all the business and also crypto blockchain projects that I met. So during the operating and also developing KILT protocol, so are there any potential challenges that you guys met, and also how KILT protocol is on the way to solve?
Mm. Well, so I think the biggest challenge that we probably have is that these standards which we implement, they are pretty new, and
Yeah.
pretty new standards normally tend to change a bit over the years. So there's things which are coming on top of it, and we definitely have to follow that, and we have to implement them. We cannot say, yeah,
Yeah.
we are these of 2022. Now we live with it. So that doesn't
Yeah.
work. So we have to keep up. So we have to keep up the team, going to conferences, also making ourselves heard. It's also necessary. So we cannot just sit and wait, because sometimes people or organizations go into the wrong direction, which we think is the wrong direction. At least then we have to say, actually, we are against it, and we would do it like that. And sometimes we are heard, sometimes we are not. But this makes a lot of sense. It's a moving thing, which
Yeah.
is, it's not stable. It's not like like you define it once and then forever it's going to be like that, because everything is new, and now AI comes in, and it's is AI actually an identity or not? Interesting philosophical questions which we have to discuss. Apparently, do AIs get DIDs? What is it good to have credentials attached to them? Do we need proof of personhood or not? So all these discussions are currently made. It's moving, and so it's
Yeah.
not, the work never ends. That's the problem.
Yeah. Yes, yes. So I believe that this question would be asked by anyone in the Polkadot community. So can you give the community some like upcoming plans for the future role for like the KILT protocol?
Yeah, so we are in the phase where we are growing, which
Yeah.
is, you are in identity, which takes a while.
Yeah.
So 50% per year, fantastic. 9,000% would be even better for us. But this is a long-term game, and this is what we always said from the beginning. We're here for 6 years now, so this is
Yeah.
in blockchain terms. This is really an old company, and we were planning for the first 10 years actually to roll this out, because it is you have to convince people. Not everyone knows that the IDs exist. Still, it will take a couple of years until it's really big, until we really grow. So people are helping, like Deloitte is helping a lot, apparently. Also, the American government now says they're going to use DID. Is fantastic. It's all fantastic news, but still, from just announcing something to really having an implementation, and then having this implementation really used outside in the world, this always takes years. And so what's the plan? The plan is definitely that we grow and that we get more people convinced of what we do. If your question was more in the direction, are we going to move to Polygon? I don't see any plans here.
Yeah. Man. Okay. So I believe that this is the last questions for this interview. Okay. So before we say goodbye, do you have any words for the Polkadot communities, and also like especially for Polkadot Insider communities?
Yeah, I think so Polkadot is right now in a very, very difficult situation, I would say. I'm not talking about liquidity or so. I'm talking about some community members leaving, some communities members staying, even some new coming in. I think we are in a huge experiment right now. How early can you actually decentralize something? Very interesting question. For Bitcoin, the answer was, yeah, you can do that from the first day. Apparently that worked. For other chains, or what they call chains, they don't even have plans to do that at all. So some of the stuff that we use out there is totally centralized. Some of the ecosystems are centralized. This is actually not the meaning of blockchain. And Polkadot apparently made the decision to decentralize totally. It will need a lot of brain and a lot of hard work and a lot of believing that this is going to work. That it is going to work. So it is for everyone who's now the independent agents of the Polkadot world. It is a hard time, but I think it is worth trying it and getting it really decentralized, because something really decentralized can grow out of it. And this is a huge, unique selling position over all the nice layer twos which we have out there, which are actually companies, and well, they could be switched off.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you. This is definitely a really nice talk and a lot of insightful information brought down for the communities about DADs. So I would love to see you again soon on Polkadot Insiders and also KILT Protocol. So the community, if you guys want to get more information about Polkadot ecosystem, please click the button, subscribe our YouTube channel, and also follow our X account for daily covering about Polkadot. Thank you.